It was October of last year when this happened, and I remember it really well because it was the first Friday I had off from work in almost 2 months. I live in a small, wooded suburb in Pennsylvania, the kind of place where you can still leave your doors unlocked during the day. It had been raining since the afternoon. Not a storm or anything, just that steady, depressing kind of rain that makes you want to stay in and watch old movies. But I had plans. My best friend Jenny had invited me over to her house. I guess she just missed me and wanted us to catch up. Jenny was my best friend back in high school. I left my house a little after 6 p.m., figuring I'd beat the heavier rain the forecast promised. I remember grabbing my umbrella and locking the front door, but something weird happened as I was pulling out to the driveway. There was a man across the street, just standing there in the rain. He had one of those old-school ponchos on, the kind that covers you from shoulders to knees. It was dark green and sagging from the water. His face was hard to make out under the hood, but I could tell he was staring directly at my car. Not moving, just watching. At first, I figured he might be a neighbor, maybe just waiting for a ride. So I shrugged it off and drove away. I had a wonderful time at Jenny's place. We discussed many things about family, education, career, and life in general. We had a great time. When I left at around 10:30 p.m., it was still raining. Driving home, I had this unusual, strange feeling. Everything looked unfamiliar in the rain. The streetlights reflected off the slick pavement, and my wipers were barely keeping up. I think that's when the eerie, late-night horror vibe started to set in. But what I didn't expect was to see the same man in the poncho standing near the end of my street when I arrived. Same spot, same stance, still facing my direction. Now, this was the moment the unease feeling started to creep in. I slowed down, trying not to look suspicious, but my gut told me something was off. It wasn't normal for anyone to be out in the pouring rain for hours like that. I parked in my driveway and sat in my car for a moment, watching him. He hadn't moved. I got out with my umbrella, walked quickly to my house, and locked the door behind me. I tried to shake the whole thing off. Maybe he was homeless, maybe he lived nearby, but deep down I couldn't let it go. I looked through the peephole. He was gone. I figured he finally left. About 20 minutes later, I heard something on my front porch. A soft, wet thud, like someone stepping onto the welcome mat. I tensed. I crept toward the door and peeked through the peephole again. He was back, closer now, just a few feet from the door, standing motionless in that soaking, wet poncho. He raised his head, revealing his face. I saw this pale, gaunt figure, like he hadn't slept in days. His eyes were wide open, too wide. Also, I noted this twisted grin on his face, like he knew I was watching him. I was now really terrified. When the man didn't leave for 5 more minutes, I called the police. I didn't even think. This time, my whole body was frozen. While I waited, I never looked away from the peephole. But when the knock came, it wasn't from the door. It was from my living room window. It was him, now in the window. Somehow, he had moved around the side of the house. His face was pressed up against the glass, smiling with that same awful smile. I let out a loud scream. Maybe I screamed several more times after that. I just remember screaming as I rushed and locked myself in the main bedroom upstairs. 2 uniformed police officers showed up a few minutes later. By then, I had already lost track of the horrifying man. I was too terrified to go anywhere close to my windows or doors. Even worse, I had problems explaining to the police my unusual ordeal. I think the man's weary face disrupted my mind so intensely that I lost touch with reality. They told me that they will look into the matter and take appropriate action. Also, they told me to report any unusual activity through their hot dial number. He never came back. Today, I can't find sleep on a rainy night. Every drop against the window sounds like a footstep. Just like the police, I think many people I tell my story don't believe me. But I can tell you this. Some crazy man stalked, waited, and terrified me that night. It's like he'd done it many times before, only that this time he wanted me to notice. No kidding. I had just gotten out of a messy breakup, and my head was all over the place. I just needed time off everything, alone. My manager gave me a week. I decided to take a solo drive down to Georgia, crash in a few motels, and clear my mind. No agenda, just me and the road. But I just wanted a somehow long trip away from home. I just wanted my trip to be enjoyable, memorable, and somehow healing. I started my long journey without incident. On the first night of the trip, I stopped at a little roadside motel in rural Tennessee. It wasn't fancy, but it looked clean enough, and I was too tired to be picky. The rain had picked up during the last leg of my drive, and by the time I checked in, it had turned into a full-on thunderstorm. One of those pitch-black, drenching southern storms that just swallow the highway. The front desk guy was a quiet older man. He handed me the key to room 8 and said something like, "Don't worry if you hear noise next door. The fella in 9 keeps odd hours." I nodded, not thinking much of it, grabbed my bag and headed down the narrow sidewalk, rain soaking the hood of my jacket. I was drenched by the time I got to my room. I remember peeling off my hoodie and shoes and just collapsing on the bed. About an hour in, I started hearing noises from room 9. At first, it was just light movement. Floor creaks, a cabinet closing, maybe a chair sliding. But then, I heard something strange. A scratching. Not against the wall, against my window. I froze. The window was covered by the thin motel curtain, the kind that barely blocks light, let alone sound. The scratching was slow and deliberate, like someone dragging their fingernails along the glass. I sat up and stared at the curtain. My heart was pounding. I thought maybe it was a branch in the wind. But I didn't see any trees close to that side, I thought. I got up slowly, tiptoed to the window slowly, and pulled the curtain back just an inch. Snap! There was a face. Right there, inches from mine, staring. I jumped back hard and yelled out loudly. I didn't know what I said or who I called. But whoever it was, they were gone before I got a good look. All I remember was that shadowy blur of wet hair and pale skin vanishing into the storm. I called the front desk and told him that someone was messing around outside my room. He sounded more annoyed than concerned, said he'd check the cameras in the morning, and that I should just keep the curtains closed. Real helpful, I told myself from within, feeling ignored. I sat on the bed for almost an hour, trying to calm down. I figured maybe it was some random druggie or hitchhiker. I triple-checked the door lock and pushed the chair under the knob, just in case. Around 2:15 a.m., I woke up to something even worse. Whispering. At first, I thought it was the wind or the rain playing tricks on me, but it got louder, clearer. It was coming from room 9. I pressed my ear to the shared wall, and what I heard sent chills throughout my body.
See you.
"You there? I see you," a male voice whispered. That terrified me. I called the emergency number on their room directory. I told the security agent on the other side that I needed quick assistance. I waited. Nobody came by. Almost 20 minutes later, I heard a knock at the door. I hesitated to get close, leave alone to open it. But after gathering enough courage, I moved slowly toward it, holding my breath. The security guard burst into the room. I guess he must have captured my horrifying, dire situation when I called. I explained to him what I saw. He knocked on room 9. No one answered. Even before he banged the door, it swung slowly, indicating that the neighboring customer had already left. We checked everywhere. We didn't see anyone out there. I guess he took off the time I was there on the bed, sitting terrified. Even more terrifying, the man at the front desk was gone. The whole place felt wrong. The night went by without hearing another weird sound or whisper. In the morning, they pulled the motel surveillance footage and discovered something that still gives me nightmares to this day. A man in a soaking wet coat had walked to my room's door twice that night. Once right after I'd checked in, and once again when I was asleep. He didn't seem dangerous or confrontational, but he didn't seem scared either. It seemed like he just wanted to peek through, watch, and probably scare a little bit. But you can never be too sure. Before that, he was captured on camera getting out of room 9 and vanishing into the rainy night. That night's footage haunts me to this day. Every time it rains now, especially if I'm near a motel or away from home, I wonder, did I survive a random stalker? Or something worse? I guess I will never know, but I now watch my steps a little bit more closely. I live in a small town just outside Eugene, Oregon, the kind of place where nothing exciting ever happens, which is exactly why this night stuck with me. It was a Thursday, late October. Cold, windy, the rain coming down in sheets. I had just gotten home from work when I realized I was out of dog food and coffee, so I threw on a hoodie, grabbed my umbrella, and walked the 6 blocks to the neighborhood grocery store. It's open 24 hours, but by the time I got there, around 9:45 p.m., the place was nearly empty. Just the cashier, some sleepy teenager stocking shelves, and 1 or 2 other customers. The fluorescent lights buzzed. It was raining heavily. After a couple of minutes, I got what I needed and wandered over to the snack aisle. That's when I noticed a guy standing at the far end, just still. Not browsing, not holding anything. Just facing my direction. He looked about 30. Scruffy beard, tan jacket, one hand in his pocket. No cart, no basket. I gave a polite half-smile and turned back to grab a bag of trail mix. But I could feel it. He was still staring. I moved to the next aisle. A minute later, so did he. This happened 2 more times. I'd turn a corner, and a minute or so later, I'd see him again. Always a few feet behind, never picking up anything. By the time I hit the frozen food section, I was beginning to get scared. I was doing everything I could to stay calm, telling myself it was coincidence, that he probably just needed something from the same aisles. But then it hit me. I turned a corner and glanced back, and he wasn't walking normally anymore. He was waiting, peeking around the end of the aisle to see which direction I'd go next. That's when I stopped pretending it was nothing. I went straight to checkout, fast. The girl behind the register smiled and asked, "Find everything okay?" I nodded, but my eyes flicked toward the entrance. The guy in the tan jacket was standing just outside the automatic doors, in the rain, waiting. I asked the cashier if she knew him. She glanced up and gave a little frown. "No, but he's been standing out there since I got on shift. Gave me the shivers, though." That was it. I asked her if I could stay inside for a bit, and she said sure. I waited near the entrance, pretending to check my phone. The man just stood there, staring inside. Not pacing, not smoking, just watching. Eventually, a car pulled up and he left, or at least walked out of sight. I waited a good 10 minutes, no sign of him. I figured he'd gotten bored and left. That was my mistake. I finally stepped out, umbrella up, groceries in hand, and started the 6-block walk home. Rain was coming down hard, fat drops slapping against the pavement. Streetlights flickered through the fog. A few blocks in, I got that feeling, like someone was walking behind me. I turned, slowly. Nothing, just puddles and fog. But I picked up the pace anyway. Then I heard it. Footsteps, squishy, deliberate footsteps, like someone trying not to be heard. I spun around again and saw a shadow dart behind a parked car. Tan jacket. My blood ran cold. I just took off without thinking. I ran 3 blocks through the pouring rain, my heart pounding hard. I ducked into a neighbor's yard and hid behind a hedge, gasping for air. That's when I saw him again, walking slowly down the sidewalk, looking side to side. He passed right in front of me, no more than 10 feet away, completely soaked. He wasn't following blindly. He was hunting. When he disappeared into the dark, I sprinted the rest of the way home and locked the door. I didn't sleep that night. I just couldn't wrap my mind around the man's motives or why he followed me in and out of the grocery store. I didn't know what to do the next morning, but I decided not to report to the police, at least until I was sure that he was targeting me and he posed a real threat. But I never saw him again. But I changed everything after that. I started carrying pepper spray, stopped walking alone at night, and I since changed my perception that a public place is always safe. Because even in a bright, open store, you can still be hunted. Like for real. A few years ago, I booked a solo weekend trip to a cabin in the Pocono Mountains of Pennsylvania. I'd been dealing with burnout, and the idea of disconnecting for a few days sounded like heaven. No phone service, no work emails, just me, the rain, and a crackling fireplace. The place was listed as rustic and remote, and it definitely lived up to it. A single-room log cabin tucked into a stretch of dense forest, about a 15-minute drive from the nearest paved road. It was charming in a primitive way. No Wi-Fi, no neighbors, just trees and silence, and the rain. It started the minute I arrived, heavy, cold, relentless. The first night was peaceful enough. I made a fire, cracked open a book, and dozed off to the sound of raindrops pelting the tin roof. But everything changed on the second night. Around 10 p.m., a thunderstorm rolled in. Thunder so loud it rattled the windows. The power went out about half an hour later, leaving me with nothing but the fireplace and a flashlight. That's when I heard the first knock. A single, dull thud on the front door. I froze, waited, listened. Nothing. I told myself it was the storm, a branch maybe. But then it happened again. This time, 3 distinct knocks. I crept to the door, flashlight in hand, and called out, "Hello?" There was no response. I thought I didn't hear well. I unlocked the deadbolt and opened it a crack. Rain blew in, soaking the floor. I saw no one out there, just pitch-black trees and sheets of rain. My flashlight barely reached past the porch. I shut the door, locked it again, and sat down in front of the fire. But I couldn't shake the feeling, like I was being stalked. Someone was watching me, and they wanted to be noticed. Then came the footsteps, heavy, slow steps outside, circling the cabin, crunching wet leaves and mud. I turned off the flashlight and crouched low, trying to listen. A branch snapped, then another. I went up to the window and peeked out through the side of the curtain. For a split second, illuminated by a flash of lightning, I saw someone standing at the tree line. They were just far enough to be blurred in the rain, but close enough that I could make out the outline of a person. Motionless, facing the cabin. I ducked away, my heart pounding fast. My mind was racing. Was it a lost hiker? A local? Someone who needed help? But there is no reason for anyone to be out here, especially not in that storm, and not just standing, I told myself. The footsteps started again, closer this time, moving around the back. I ran to the kitchen and grabbed a fireplace poker. I was ready to fight back in case he entered. But I was really frightened at that moment, really terrified. Then I heard the back door rattle. Someone was trying the handle. Then there was silence. For a moment I thought, maybe I scared them off. Then I heard this weird breathing sound, low, slow, calm. I backed away. The storm roared outside and the thunder crashed angrily, and still, nothing but that breathing. Until it stopped. I waited. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Eventually, I gathered the courage to open the door with the poker raised. No one. But on the porch floor, right at the door frame, was a boot print, facing the door. Barely wet, like they had been standing under the overhang for a long, long time. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. Just sat with my back against the wall, fire dying out, poker in hand. I flinched at every click I heard from outside. At first light, I bolted, threw my bag in the car, and peeled out of the dirt road. I didn't look back. The following morning, I told the rental owner what happened. He said there had been rumors about a man seen in the woods, wearing a military-style poncho, lurking near cabins. But they never found who it was. Ever since, I fear remote cabins, because sometimes when the rain gets heavy and the storm gets loud, it reminds me of the frightening stalking experience that night. I just don't understand whether he knew me or what he wanted. It seems I will never know.